order here. Next up is the update from Homeless Strategy Office on inclement weather response and new initiatives. No, we've got plenty of people. If we didn't have quorum, then. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Gray. I have the pleasure of serving as the director of Austin's Homeless Strategies and Operations. I know we have a couple of items that I've been asked to cover today. One is an overview of our cold weather shelter operations, and the other is an update about our new South Austin Housing Navigation Center. I know you also have an item on your agenda later today regarding the cold weather shelter operations, and I'd be happy to speak to that too, but at the appropriate time, Madam Chair. So you just let me know if you want me to do that now or stick around for when that item comes up on the agenda.
I think you can tack it on to the end of your presentation.
Sure.
If that's
Great.
easiest for you.
Not a problem. Sounds great. Well, just for a quick background, for those who aren't familiar with our office, we were established at the end of 2023, and our vision is simply to ensure that everybody in Austin has access to stable housing as well as the support that they need to thrive. And we do our work premised on 5 key pillars. The first is system leadership, being a leader in the local homeless response system in partnership with organizations like ECHO and a whole host of community groups, making sure that the city is making impactful community investments with the resources under our command. We manage about $35 million in supportive service contracts every year, and we want to make sure that Austinites are seeing a return on that investment. And most importantly, we want to make sure that those investments are having real transformative impact in the lives of the clients who we're touching every day. Speaking of those clients, the third is crisis response system management. We just came out of a weather crisis where at last count, we served about 4,500 bed nights of service over a 9-day cold weather shelter activation. But even on blue sky days, for most of us, there is somebody in our community in crisis, and we want to make sure that we have a system that's able to help them, hold them, and ultimately get them on a path off the streets and into housing. The fourth is communications, making sure the public is aware of the work that we're doing and that people have a way to talk back to us about the great work as well as the areas where we can improve. And last is investing in our people. Doing this work is hard work. I keep glancing at my public safety partners because, again, for the last several days, we've all been in this cold weather shelter response together. And I know that I did a 36-hour shift at one point. I had staff who did 24, 36-hour shifts. And it's important that we invest in them as they invest in transforming lives across our city. So talking about cold weather shelter operations, and this is a lot of text on screen, but I promise I won't read it all verbatim, but it's here for your viewing pleasure if you'd like to look at it. Our cold weather shelter response is truly a life-saving measure. I think at peak capacity this past event, we had about 850 people in our cold weather shelter system. That's 850 people who were not out in sub-freezing temperatures for multiple hours where they literally could have died if they had been exposed to that weather. Our office monitors the weather forecast. We look 2 weeks ahead every week at weather conditions, and we will activate cold weather shelters if the National Weather Service forecast at the Camp Mabry station indicates an overnight low of 35 degrees or less. And we specifically use that National Weather Center location because, you probably all have weather apps on your phone. I have a weather app on my phone, and they all probably say a little bit different things. So we need to have one clear indicator that we go to and that we could tell our community to go to see whether or not we're going to hit that threshold for cold weather shelter. If, in fact, we do activate the cold weather shelter, we use the Austin Community Court office at One Texas Center as our centralized hub for registration and embarkation. That allows us to keep an accurate head count of the number of people who are coming in. It allows us to triage families and unaccompanied minors and make sure that they're able to get safely to a hotel accommodation. And it allows us to deploy people to shelters where we know there is available space. We provide snacks and other resources for folks when they come into embarkation. They'll also receive a meal at the cold weather shelter. So when we do overnight only, folks get dinner at night and breakfast the following day. When we do a 24-hour shelter, which means the shelter is open all day, then we provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between. And as I mentioned, if families come with children or if it's an unaccompanied minor, we do not send them to the overnight shelter. We will actually put them in a hotel. And we'll put them in a hotel for the duration of that experience. So for folks who came into cold weather shelters last Friday, those folks have been in that hotel all week until I think either this morning or tomorrow morning. So we really try to make sure that we're putting people in spaces where they are safe, where they could be accommodated, and they have time to figure out their plan and their exit strategy. We do allow our guests to bring belongings if they like. They just have to be able to carry their belongings with them. This is particularly important for our unhoused folks because we know many people will not come inside if they cannot bring their stuff with them. And so we tell them that you can bring it in as long as you're able to transport it yourself. Cap Metro is our transportation provider. They do provide rides at no cost for anybody who needs to get to One Texas Center. And let's say we have a situation like this past weekend where the road condition was so bad that Cap Metro had to shut down their service. Then we deploy a system through Austin 311 where people can call into Austin 311, they can request pickup, and Cap Metro will dispatch a driver to go pick the person up and then bring them to where we need them to be. We also allow people to bring pets, and we've had all kinds of pets, mostly dogs, few cats. I think we've had a snake and a turtle at one point. But you are allowed to bring your pet as long as your pet is not aggressive towards other people. If it is a dog, we ask that you please put the dog on a leash. And if the dog, gets up and walks around, we might ask you to allow us to put the dog in a kennel while they're in the shelter. But again, we know that most people will not abandon their pet outdoors. Even those of us who are fortunate enough to be housed, if the power goes out, you are not going to leave your dog or your cat or your turtle at home. And so we invite you to please bring your pet with you. We want to make sure that the pets are accommodated. And we have a great partnership with Animal Services where they also rotate through our system, providing pet food, doing checkups, and other things that are necessary to keep the pets happy and healthy and safe. If couples show up at the shelter, we do allow couples to go to the same shelter location, but we do separate men and women within the shelter. So they're in the same space, same building, but they're in two different parts of the building, if that makes sense. And then last is we don't publicly advertise the locations of our cold weather shelter sites. We do that for a number of reasons. Top one is safety. We have folks who come into our cold weather shelters for a variety of reasons. And unfortunately, some of those are women who are trying to escape the clutches of an abusive husband, or maybe a young person who's trying to get away from a predator. And so we don't publish the locations for those purposes. Also, operationally, we don't always know well enough in advance what locations are going to be open. We use recreation centers as our overnight cold weather shelter sites. If school is in service, some of those recreation centers are the same places where people are going for childcare and after-school care. Sometimes there's senior activities. Sometimes a rec center's HVAC might go down and we have to take that service, that location offline. And so it's very challenging for the public to always track the locations of which recreation centers are open. And so that's one of the reasons why we use One Texas Center as our hub. It is a predictable, reliable, safe location for people to keep in their mind, to know to get to. And as long as you can get to One Texas Center, we can make sure that you have a safe, accommodating place to be. The last thing that I'll note here, which I didn't note, is we never turn anybody away. If you are coming to the city of Austin for a safe, warm place to be, we don't care if you're single or a couple. We don't check your immigration status. We don't care if you're an Austin resident or if you're from a surrounding city or a surrounding county. If you are coming in, we will accommodate you. We do not have a cap. We work really closely with Austin Emergency Management to ensure that we have surge capacity. With this on a normal activation, we'll maybe have 2 or 3 shelters open. With this last activation, we had 7, and we were ready to go to 8 if we needed to. Travis County, to their credit, stepped up and helped us staff that 7th shelter. We will never turn anybody away. So whether you're housed or unhoused, single, couple, whatever, please, please, please show up. Don't think that we're going to turn you away. Come and let us figure out how to accommodate you. And then I talked a little bit about this most recent winter event. Any chance I get now, I always talk about these three staff, one of whom is my staff, but the other two are from the community court. We had a man who was transported to One Texas Center. I'm not exactly sure how he got there, but I know when he was there, he was literally almost frozen solid. And when I say that, I'm not talking in a symbolic. I mean, literally could not move parts of his body, could not speak, was just shivering. And over the course of about 10 minutes, our staff dried him off, took off his socks and washed his feet, gave him warm clothes, called EMS to make sure that paramedics were on the way. And after about 10 minutes, the man finally said, "Look, I can finally move my arms." And then he could start to move his legs. And then he was able to start talking and moving much more. Now, we did not bring him in the cold weather shelter. We convinced that man to go with EMS to a hospital to make sure that he got checked out. But that man would have died outdoors if somebody had not brought him to One Texas Center, and if our staff, in partnership with our EMS and our fire partners, didn't get him to a hospital. And so when we talk about this resource as a life-saving resource, we mean that literally. And I'm really grateful for our three City of Austin employees who stepped up and stepped in, kept it cool and calm, but made sure that this gentleman was taken care of. So I'm going to pivot a little bit and just briefly touch on the South Austin Housing Navigation Center, which I think was another topic of interest for this group. First, I just want to talk a little bit about what housing navigation is. And at its core, housing navigation is really exactly what it sounds like. It's a service center that somebody can go to get connected with housing opportunities and resources. Now, those housing resources might look like one-time financial assistance to move into an apartment. It might be a meeting with an attorney to help stop an unjust eviction. It might be meeting with the case manager who could help you apply for housing, help you find housing that you're eligible for. Maybe it could be a shelter entry. So we could use the shelter as a bridge opportunity to get you off the street until your housing unit is available for you. But that's all this is. A housing navigation center is not a homeless shelter. Nobody lives here. It's not a needle exchange program. We might be able to have ancillary medical services here. For example, Integral Care has a clinic on wheels where they can drive out and they can provide mental health assessments and physical health assessments on site. We'd be more than happy to open up space for that. But the primary purpose of a housing navigation center is to help people get housed. And it's really important to put these centers in places that are actively undergoing gentrification and displacement, because when you bring these housing stabilization resources to those communities, it helps keep people in their homes, which means for me and my team, it helps keep you off the street. I love helping my clients, but I don't like having more clients. So we want to bring more of these resources to our city to help keep people housed and to help get people housed quicker. We do have some housing navigation centers in the city of Austin already, one of which is at the Austin Community Court. It is a community court, but you can walk in for walk-in services. The other ones are all faith-based, community-run navigation centers, some of which you're probably familiar with. The Trinity Center, which operates right here in downtown Austin, Sunrise Navigation Center, which operates in South Austin, and the Charlie Center, which operates in Northwest Austin. I want to be clear that all three of those partners do excellent work. They are part of the reason why we've seen a 25% reduction in housing wait times. They're part of the reason why last year, as a continuum, we've housed more people than we've ever housed in a single year in our city's history. And at the same time, because they're faith-based and community-owned, we don't have any oversight authority over them. And so our goal is to establish more navigation centers that we have some oversight and authority over. That way, it just brings in that additional level of accountability and consistency across the housing navigation experience. We are in the process of establishing a center advisory board to help us open this navigation center and then ultimately operate it. This is something that was specifically requested by the neighborhood associations that are going to be most proximate to the navigation center. I think it's a fantastic idea. We just closed the application for this, I believe, last Wednesday, with about 70 applicants for the 13 seats, which you can see here on the screen. 5 of those seats will be from folks from the nearby neighborhoods. 3 will be from individuals who have lived experience of homelessness. 4 will be from organizations that do work related to homeless services or housing services. And then 1 will be from our faith-based community or a civic organization that's not the city of Austin. We are still on track to get this center open by late summer. That's been our goal from the onset, and I'm happy to say that we're still on schedule to deliver that. We have a Speak Up Austin webpage. If you just Google search Speak Up Austin, City of Austin Navigation Center, it will be the first thing that pops up, I guarantee it. But that's where we keep all of our project updates, and if the timeline ever shifts, then it will be announced through that website as well as through our listserv that you could sign up for through that website as well. So, Madam Chair, I know I ran through all that really quickly. I want to be respectful of your time. Happy to answer questions about the presentation now and then maybe address the other item later.
Yeah, do we have any questions? If we could get the screen back up so I can see everybody online. Commissioner Bernhardt, excuse me.
Thank you for that presentation. It was really helpful. So I got kind of excited when you said you guys were planning more navigation centers because I was curious, has there been an analysis of where the current navigation centers are and where we need navigation centers that we don't have them? I understand the discussion about the eminent new navigation center is replacing a navigation center.
But so potentially, right?
Okay.
That's come up in discussion. So for the navigation center that we are looking to open at the end of the summer, that neighborhood was specifically chosen because when you look at eviction filings in Travis County, that neighborhood right there near Parker and Otorf has some of the highest eviction rates in our entire county. We were out talking to school principals in that area who were telling us about students who started the year living a few blocks from school and now are having to commute from Del Valley or Bastrop because they've been evicted, but they're still trying to stay tied to their school community. So that one was a very pressing, kind of urgent opportunity for us. Since we're doing one on the south side, our next natural location to look is on the north side. The Charlie Center is northwest Austin. They kind of do really great work in that area of town. But once you get north of downtown on the east side, it's kind of a vacuum, right? Yeah. You have the Trinity Center right here in downtown. You have the Charlie Center northwest, but really nothing north central, northeast. And so that's where we're scoping for potential additional navigation centers.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Do we have any questions online specifically? No? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Rutan.
I don't know if we're going to we're on the navigation side. I didn't want to go back to the inclement weather shelter questions if that isn't a good time to do that.
No, I think all of it is game because it was all part of the, yeah, you can go ahead and ask about inclement weather stuff as well.
So I'd like to first say getting better every year. As someone outside of this hat, being a service provider in that world, getting better every year. So want to say kudos to that. I like to acknowledge when good work is being done. I have a couple questions, and I can pause whenever, Chair, so that we can all share this space. But I do know that something that gave your service providers and your constituents some concern this go around was specifically the potential interaction with ICE during that time. Now, I know we don't take immigration status and all of that good stuff, but I did want to allow for space for you to clearly on the record describe the protocols in relation to the proper procedures with ICE during inclement weather times, either at an embarkation or the shelter locations themselves.
Thank you, ma'am. Yep, we've received very specific instructions from city leadership on how to engage with ICE. I will start off by saying that I know there were rumors kind of out there that ICE was going to come to the embarkation and come to the shelters. That didn't happen, and we didn't have any indication that that was going to happen. Now, should ICE show up, state law does not allow us to stop them from conducting their activity. But we also don't have to necessarily aid in the doing of that activity. And so internally for us, what that looks like is a request to ICE to see any documentation that they can provide that justifies their presence for being there, a call to our city attorney's office just to activate kind of that legal arm of the city and make sure that, I guess, number one, that our staff is acting appropriately and that we're looking out for our clients' best interest, but also that the city is prepared to do anything, should it need to. And then we would also call our law enforcement partners at APD. Again, I think it's, we're not going to stand in the way of ICE and stop them, but APD holds that relationship as a fellow law enforcement agency. And so that'd be a call from my staff to me to the chief to, again, kind of activate that part of the city operation. But again, with this activation, we had no indication that ICE was going to be there. We heard the same rumors that you heard, and we were letting people know, look, ICE is not coming. We are solely focused on wanting to get people inside for the purpose of getting them out of this life-threatening weather.
Commissioner Rutan, I think you had a question as well. Go ahead, Commissioner Smith. You can go ahead, Commissioner Smith. I know you had another question.
10-4. I just kind of want to pause there because we just heard we would call APD, but then we just talked to Chief where I made a scenario where would you stand in the way as a shield in order for someone not to be harmed? And there's lack of clarity of what happens in that circumstance. So that doesn't feel like a completely closed loop to me. So I would just like some more clarity. And I know you may not be able to give that right here, right now, because Chief wasn't able to give that right here, right now. But before we come back to this table, again, I know for sure from my community partners and those people actively on the streets, that clarity is really important to how they operate. Additionally, talking about their operations, especially for the grassroots organizations, though it is explained that there are protocols when Capital Metro stops service provision, there still appears to be a gap, and again, getting better every year. So now we're only focused on those small gaps, right? There is still a gap when it comes to that outreach portion. It's still feeling like a lot of that outreach is being taken on outside of the bureaucracy ecosystem. And what happens when that happens is that relying on those NGOs or, individuals in some circumstance, especially those small grassroots organizations, that really allows the availability for them to be burnt out. And so I just want to say for the good of the order, those, even though they're not officially in the ecosystem or they're not promulgated or even funded for some of them, they are playing an essential role in our ability to continue to get better, to continue to get people in there, to continue to break through these records. And if you burn them out, people are going to suffer. So, I'd really like some focus and attention. If it ever came to this commission, I most likely would have to recuse myself anyway. But just for my conscience, I want to say we're getting to the point where we're really stretching them thin and have been stretching them thin. And if they were to go dark, that would be a huge hole in kind of how we're, proceeding. And on that front, speaking as someone who has been on the front line and has welcomed that person who can't move their extremities, it is really traumatizing for someone to not be a first responder and have to consume that trauma. So I'd also really suggest, again, looking at fine tuning those small gaps. What are we doing in relation to trauma response and therapy and counseling for the individuals that aren't necessarily first responders, but are working in that ecosystem as they deal during a traumatic time with a traumatic clientele going through trauma, being traumatized themselves. Does that make sense?
Commissioner, I feel like you were...
Ecosystem,
yeah.
nonprofits, outreach, and also therapy, trauma, long-term sustainability.
Absolutely. First, I am pleased to hear you say that the system gets better every year. I like to believe that, but I'm also very biased. So thank you so much for that feedback. And I also want to acknowledge.
A long way since Storm Uri. Let's not.
Hey, well that's good.
We as Austin.
So if you could put that in writing to TC Broadnax, I think we'd all appreciate it. So I think first, when I talk about the success, though, and how we get better every year, I want to be very clear that our success is not possible without those community partners who stand in the gap and who are working in the creeks and the streets each and every day, right? And telling the folks who won't listen to me, hey, you need to bring your butt into shelter because it's not safe for you to be out here. Whether that's the Healing Project or the My Sister Keepers, the We Can Nows, the Austin Mutual Aids, and there's so many more just like that who were actively working with me, working with Austin Emergency Management, but also on their own, going out, driving their vehicles, getting people, providing food, providing blankets, transporting people to shelter. And so I do think it's very appropriate that we honor and that we recognize those community partners because they are so critical to the life-saving operation. One of our commitments, and this is why I said I felt like you were in the Emergency Operations Center with us, because even before the event ended, one of our commitments was to connect with those organizations and really talk about what formal partnership looks like. Having been on a nonprofit side before, I know what it feels like to have somebody ask you to do something and to not get compensated for it. And our nonprofit partners are providing real value to our community. That value deserves to be invested in. And so we've made a firm commitment, not one of those like pleasantries, oh, we'll get back to you and talk about contracts. No, we made a firm commitment that we are going to circle back as soon as we get out of this winter season and start planning for next winter to look at what real partnership looks like with those groups. I think that's exactly the next mountain we have to climb. But I also invited Janet from Austin Emergency Management to come sit at the table with me because a lot of the work that we did this past event was really through the leadership of Austin Emergency Management and their mass care wing, which coordinates with a lot of these community groups. So I want to give Janet an opportunity just to talk a little bit about that part of the operation.
Yes, and I think since Winter Storm Uri and Mara, there's been a lot of investment made into the mass care component of most emergency responses. And so when it comes to winter weather, one thing that Austin Emergency Management has done is actually built what they call the Austin Resilience Network. It's a network of, I'm going to say, about 70 community-based organizations that currently, come together to help support, and they provide different types of service to the community. But we realized following Winter Storms Uri and Mara that there was a need to kind of make sure we had our arms around, and one, they're providing some situational awareness to us in the Emergency Operations Center about what is actually happening out on the streets. But they may actually be providing rides into shelters. They may be providing staff in. So they provide a whole plethora of types of services to the community and to the response. So I think one thing that we saw this year that really made a difference was that this group network of community-based organizations did really come and help support the response effort. We've spent a lot of time over the last year working on mass care, working on sheltering operations as well, knowing that we're building this network and building the shelter response as we go. And I feel like this was a very good test of that system as it currently stands, because we had to do a lot of different things like being able to stand up surge shelter and make sure we had surge staffing. And I think there were a lot of successful things that happened during this particular response. A lot of coordination, a lot of communication, both internally within the city as well as externally with our community-based organizations out in the field.
Okay, thank you. You said you had something that you wanted to say about our recommendation. If you wanted to touch on that briefly, and then we can move on. We're going to consider the recommendation at the tail end, but if you want to go ahead and offer your comment on that.
Yes, ma'am. First, I appreciate all of the thoughts around cold weather shelter operations and how we make them better. The improvements that we've made have been informed by feedback from the community and by the folks who've come into shelter and have had no problem telling us about ourselves. And so I'm really glad to hear that we are doing better year after year. I'll say when it comes to the decentralized approach, this is something that that we've wrestled with a lot internally as an office. And there's a few reasons why we don't do it. And I just want to share that with you, as part of your consideration for your resolution. First, kind of as I talked about, we don't have kind of dedicated spaces that we use for the cold weather shelter operation. The spaces sometimes rotate depending on facility availability, other things going on in the city, other needs for the facilities. And so what we found is having a consistent, dedicated place for people to go to takes the responsibility and the risk off of our clients, and puts all of that responsibility on us to make sure that One Texas Center is always open and available. The last thing that we would want to have happen in a storm like the one we just had is for somebody to say, hey, Northwest Recreation Center was open last week for cold weather shelter, so I'm going to go straight to Northwest Recreation Center, and they miss our message that one's actually closed. And now they're way up there by MOPAC in 2222, having done all the work to get there, when in fact the closest recreation center on the north side is Turner Roberts, which is way out in Colony Park. And so now you've got to double all the way back. And so we don't want to have to put that responsibility on folks to keep track of which things are open on which activations. And since we cannot guarantee that a specific site will always be open every day, we don't do the decentralized model. Even with this last activation, in around 11 o'clock at night, I got a call from PARD saying the HVAC just went out. We need to move people from this location to another one. And it took us about an hour and a half to do that. So even when a site is open, we're still having to move people. It's just much easier to manage from a centralized command than to have it dispersed. The other is when it comes to the operations itself and the cost of the operations. These cold weather shelter operations have real cost. When we have people register at One Texas Center, we're able to track exactly how many people are coming in, and then we have a way of making an estimate of how many EMS calls we'll get, fire calls we'll get, APD calls we'll get for overnight drop-offs, and then we're able to scale the operation accordingly. So if we only need to open 2 shelters and not 5, great. Let's open 2 shelters. It reduces the cost of the public. We're able to make sure that those 2 shelters operate exceedingly and abundantly well, and we're not having to keep another facility open for 1 or 2 people and try to manage some of these inconsistencies across the system, where you could have one shelter that's at 110% capacity and another one that's at 2% capacity. Unfortunately, we lack the resources to both track kind of real time the occupancy at different shelters. So having everything flow through a centralized point allows us to kind of monitor exactly how many buses we send out to a location and track occupancy levels that way. But if we had to, let's say, stand up 5 sites at one time and then try to track real time the occupancy across all those 5 sites and deploy resources to possibly move people between sites, that just becomes a logistical level of gymnastics that we are not yet capable to do. Not saying that we can't get there one day. It's just as a city and as an office, we're not staffed or capable to do that at that time. I think the last thing is, I know when it comes to the centralized hub model, the biggest critique we get is that is the transportation, right? It's the fact that you have one hub that everybody has to try to get to. And so I'll just kind of share 2 things on that. Number one, even in a decentralized version or model, you don't necessarily eliminate the transportation issue. At one point this past weekend, the 3 sites that we activated was a site at Turner Roberts, a site at Montopolis, and a site at Duff Springs, right? So if you're living Northwest Austin, you still have to hop on a bus to get to a site. And so there's no guarantee that in a decentralized model that, you're not going to have to get on a bus to try to get somewhere. The transportation barrier exists in both models. I think what we can do better, and what we're hearing from our community that we need to do better, is figure out a better system to get people to the embarkation hub, because not everybody can wait for the CAT Metro bus. Not everybody can necessarily take the CAT Metro bus, even though we're grateful that CAT Metro provides that service at no cost. And so in addition to working with the community partners as one of our next kind of mountains to climb, solving this transportation challenge is another mountain that we are looking to climb for next year. So I'm not going to say that we oppose the resolution, because I want you to know every year we kind of wrestle with, do we keep the centralized model or do we disperse and decentralize? But I thought it would also be helpful for you to understand why we do the model that we do and just where we're at operationally, which is right now we're not operationally set up to do a decentralized model in a way that we think would really work well for our community. So, Madam Chair, I just want to offer that feedback.
Thank you for that.
And happy to meet with folks, happy to stick around if you want me to answer questions later on that item. And if you decide not to talk about the item today, but folks still want to meet with me and kind of talk through it, I'm happy to make myself available between now and your next meeting.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you all.